don't think there was a plan B for him as far as life was concerned. Like, all he ever wanted to do was music. I was absolutely sure that he was gonna make a record. I don't know about me, but I knew Chad was gonna make a record. So I was just like, I'm gonna just stick with him and hold him down. And eventually he's gonna make a record and I'm gonna be on there. Y'all fed out there, everybody? All right, ain't no MSG, so I don't want to see you take no nap. That's on you. Thanks for having me, Noah.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm curious, Bun, how did your parents' professional lives inform your career ambitions?
Basically by, just being hardworking people. I did not come from a family of means, so to speak. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I come from a very working class family, and when I say working class family, I don't mean immediately, but literally all of my aunts and uncles, everyone in the generations that preceded me were working class people. None of them had higher levels of education. My father dropped out in the sixth grade to work with the family. My mother dropped out at 10th grade to help raise her siblings. So without higher education, higher forms of employment are very limiting. And so basically they both were working class people. My mother, to this day, will not stop working. I've told her you don't have to do that. But when you get past a certain age, most people just want to stay active. You know what I'm saying? Because if you don't tend to move, you get kind of stuck and complacent. But it was that work ethic, right? That idea of putting in a good day's work, being enough for people, not really wanting to be made a big fuss over, or feel like a big deal. Like, get up, go to work, do your job, go home. Keep your head low, right? Because obviously my parents grew up in an era where they weren't really given a true voice and a pure voice to really speak to a lot of things that they were dealing with. So for Black people in the 60s and the 70s, it was best to kind of not make issues, be quiet and do your job and go home. And that really stuck with me, So I take the good and the bad with a grain of salt, because that's what the people that raised me did. And things just happened to work out the way they did.
Where did you get the confidence to pursue a career in the arts?
Honestly, I didn't even look at it as a career when I first started, right? But I did have an English teacher, Mr. Agnew, my 10th grade English teacher, who recognized that I had a natural gift for the written word and encouraged me, to pursue that. Rap was very early on. He didn't really have an understanding of the culture. But he did see that I was, fascinated with writing and the written word, because, I'd have to do journal and stuff in the morning and that type of shit. And I tried to get it done as quick as possible so I could kind of write rhymes and shit in class. And he got wind of it and looked at it and he was like, look, I don't know what it is you're doing, whatever, but if writing is what you love to do, I think you're pretty good at it and you should continue it. And then after that, it was really, really like classmates and shit, just like, hey, you actually pretty good at this shit. Because I got in terms of the city, Port Arthur and everybody that was rapping at the time, I got in very late. When I started rapping, Chad, who was a year under me, had already been making music for over 2 years. So even though I was like an older person, he was more seasoned in creating the art. And then once I started seeing people in my town, like actually recording music, because as a fan, I thought you had to be in New York, you had to be in LA, you had to be in a big studio with all this type of shit going on. And they were making music like at home, at the crib. So I was like, if they can do this shit, and I'm like, and I know I can rap better than that dude, right? So if that dude is over here making music, then I know I can make some fucking music, but it wasn't really, to be honest, no, it wasn't a confidence in me. It was my confidence in Chad, right? Like, I don't think there was a plan B for him as far as life was concerned. Like, all he ever wanted to do was music, and he didn't get the full high school experience as everybody else did, because he was sick in high school. He had an illness in high school. He had a very low immune system as a teenager. And so he was homeschooled for his junior year, to the point where he was like, you know what, this ain't even worth the trouble. Like, f this, I'm not going to college. I'm not trying to do none of that shit anyway. All I want to do is this music. And I was absolutely sure that he was gonna make a record. I don't know about me, but I knew Chad was gonna make a record. So I was just like, I'm gonna just stick with him and hold him down. And eventually he's gonna make a record and I'm gonna be on that bit.
I'm curious, you know, you mentioned writing in high school, and I know that when you started writing raps, you got to a place where you were writing like 10 pages a day.
Easy.
What was animating or motivating you to do that? Like, what was the payoff?
Well, I mean, look, I'm a teenager, right? This is in the late 80s, right? So I'm watching Yo MTV Raps. I'm watching, you know, Rap City, all of that stuff. We didn't really have Video Music Box and that type of shit down here. Maybe Friday Night Lights on USA would show a couple of videos, MTV every now and then, but mainly, you know, Rap City and Yo MTV Raps. And, you know, you look one day and you see the Ghetto Boys on MTV, right? You hear the Ghetto Boys playing all over the country, and then the Ghetto Boys are on Source magazine cover and all this type of shit. And I'm like, okay, that's too close. That's just too close, right? If they can get there and they can make it, then we should be able to make it if we can make music that's on that level. But we were seeing the growth in the South, and we had already seen, you know, the ghetto style DJs and Luke Records in Florida, and we had already seen Kilo in Atlanta, and even in Philadelphia with like the Tough Crew and guys like that back in the day. You started to see other regions outside of New York and LA actually creating music and putting it out into the world and being received outside of their community. So all of those things happening at the time, but specifically watching the rise of the Ghetto Boys and Rap Live Records at that time, it just told us, man, look, this South people, if you do it right and stay true to who you are, people will with you. Well, I don't necessarily remember the first rhyme I wrote, but I do remember the way I went about writing it. I was on some like extra human kind of, you know, not necessarily on Doom's level, but that kind of a thing, right? And it rhymed, and it was terrible. A lot of my first rhymes were really, really, really bad. Because I didn't really have an audience. I was just writing rhymes for myself to entertain myself. I wasn't writing rhymes as something that other people had to listen to, and as soon as I said it to somebody else, they did not enjoy the experience. And so a lot of my early experience is really trying to read the room. You know what I'm saying? And making sure I'm talking about that people will understand, that people can make sense of, and that people can be like, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about. So that took a little while to develop. But once I got my feet up under me, it was on from there. Like, it was very hard to contain me and deal with me as an artist.
In that period, you know, most of the rap music that's coming out, as you say, is coming out of New York. There's a little bit coming from Florida, obviously the Ghetto Boys. But you guys are teenagers in Port Arthur. How are you even figuring out how to create rap music? Like, you know, there's no YouTube. You can't go and like look how to make beats, right? Like, where is the knowledge coming from?
This is Chad literally like seeking this stuff out, like going to equipment stores, right? Going on, looking in magazines. There used to be like rap pages in different magazines, and they would show you like different equipment that you could like call and order and buy, different stuff like that. And, you know, we were like, I was selling candy in high school, right? Like Chad's parents owned all the vending machines in Port Arthur, right? So he had a Sam's card at like 16. And so we would go to Sam's. This is in 1990, 89 and 90. We would go to Sam's and just buy a ton of candy, right? And then sit on it till like fifth period. And then just be like, hey, I got Snickers, I got M&Ms, I got Starburst, I got Now and Laters and shit. And people would buy the shit out of that. This was before, I think most high schools have like vending machines and shit now. But this was before that, right? So you would have to have left school and went to the store to get candy, to have some candy after lunch. You know what I'm saying? And we would sell that and take that money and pool those resources and buy equipment. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know what we were buying. I just knew Chad was like, hey, we need to get like $600 so we can get this drum machine. Hey, we need to get like $1,100 so we can get this 4-track. Different things like that. And we just would my mom still does home health care. So my mom cares for like invalids. And I used to like on the weekends, instead of like going to football games and stuff, I used to like have to do night care. So I would be there in case somebody started choking or couldn't breathe and shit like that. And I used to make a little money off of that. So any way we could try to make some money and pool the resources to get the equipment that we would need. Now he already had some equipment, but then as shit started to evolve and all that shit, Fruity Loops and all that type of shit starts to come into play. And we like, yo, we need this shit, we need that shit. And we would just try to hustle up whatever little dollars we could do. Eventually, as we got older, we hustled different shit, but Candy was the best place to start for us.
You and Pimp C famously did not get along at first.
Right.
And it was a photo of you and Eazy-E, Polaroid from an Eazy-E concert that convinced him that you knew what you were talking about.
But I didn't believe what he was saying either. I didn't believe that this kid was making this music in his house, and he didn't believe that I could get into these nightclubs. I've had this beard since like the 10th grade. So if you went to school with me, I don't look any different. Well, I had hair. I'll say that. Like, you look at my graduation pictures, I had like a flat top. But that's literally the only difference between what I look like in the 10th grade and look like now. So I was the one that could buy beer. Sorry, I hate to say it. I was the one that could get beer. I was the one that could get liquor. And then like on senior weekend when we came to Houston, I was the only one. There was like 3 of us that could get in the club that night. And I stole the picture. That's the thing.
Really?
Yeah. So they was over there taking a bunch of Polaroids
and you just
in the VIP section, and like the guy taking the picture, he put it down. The guy taking the picture, he put it down, but I just stole one.
How did you know that this was the person that you wanted to become creative partners with?
Because I realized very early he was more talented than any of us put together. Like collectively, all of us, and don't get me wrong, this is the same group of people that had DJ DMD involved with it, who has a classic Houston record as well. But I think even DJ DMD would defer to Chad being the single most talented person we had ever personally come into contact with. His ear for music is unmatched, right? To the point where like 2 of our biggest records are records that came from other artists, right? Like One Day, and I hate to jump here, but like One Day is a record that was originally on 3-2's first solo album that 3-2 didn't want. He played us the album, I just told the story backstage. He played us his whole album, the last song was One Day, and he was like, yeah, that's the album, but that last one ain't going on, that shit too slow. And Chad was like, you crazy, that's the hit. That's the one. He was like, man, that shit too sad. Nobody was like, give it to me, I'll show you, give it to us. And that's why 3-2 is on the first verse of One Day. Because it's literally, we kept his first verse, then we do the second and third verse. And it ended up becoming one of our most seminal records on our seminal album. You know, it was one of the biggest songs that people connect with us. And that just was a testament to how good of an ear and how deep of a vision that he had. It was literally unmatched.
To that point, I'm curious, like, you know, when you guys are making those early records that would end up being the first album, you know, you're using a lot of the same source material as New York rappers. I mean, and I know Pocket Full of Stones was in fact inspired by listening to the Pete Rock instrumental.
Yes.
What were the conversations you guys were having around how to sort of express the Port Arthur and Houston sound to take what these people were doing, but make it your own and make it different? And like, how much were you guys articulating that? How much was Pimp just doing this? And
okay, so here was the first thing, right? In terms of, I guess what you're asking, how do we choose to identify ourselves and how do we choose to present ourselves maybe to people, and how much were we taking from what people were doing at the time, right? And how much influence, outside influence maybe.
Yeah, and then just how did you develop your own personal style and sound?
I'm glad you said style. So late 80s, early 90s, 89, 90, early 91, this was the coming of age of the pro-black era and a knowledge of self, so to speak, right? I was a very big Chuck D fan. I was a very big KRS-One fan, and I was really all about information, taking in as much information as possible. And so I'm literally in that mode when we start creating UGK. So we're in the studio one day, and the owner of the record label comes and says, hey, we need to talk, right? So we all go out of the studio into the living room area. And at this time, I'm growing dreads. I know you can't see this, right? But it's 1991. I'm in my senior year of high school. I got twists, right? I got the X t-shirt on. I got the Africa medallions. on. I'm wearing beads and shit on my neck and on my wrist. And they go in there and they say, okay, Bun B, you got to do something, bro. That ain't the South. That ain't Houston. That's not what we represent. I'm like, this is what I'm on right now. I'm like, bro, you can't have all that shit on. We talking about selling dope. Like, you can't have this shit on. It don't match. It don't work. I'm like, but that's just as much of me as everything else that I do. Bro, you cannot have all this black shit on talking about this shit about what's happening. It's just not gonna work. And it literally was a vote. I got outvoted 3-1. I had to cut my hair. I had to take off everything, you know what I'm saying? And it was just an idea of not sending mixed messages to people, right? Like, we gotta have a clear identity of who we are and what we represent. And that doesn't mean that can't be a part of you. And at some point we can figure out how to make that make sense. But right now we're making this street music that represents the world we live in, right? Not the world we aspire to. This is the music about the conditions that we live in right now. This is the shit we see every day. You only see that shit on TV. You know what I'm saying? So against my better judgment, I went with the crew, and it made sense in the long run, because I look back and realized that it would have looked crazy for half the group to look like NWA and the other half to look like De La Soul or some shit. You know? And it was just a matter of just being as true to who you're supposed to be as possible, right? It wasn't about who I was aspiring to be. It wasn't about what I enjoyed or anything like that. When you're an artist, you have to be very careful that you're not making music always for yourself. You gotta read the room, you know what I'm saying? Now, there's some times where you go through things and you have to find ways to express yourself, and music is an outlet for that. Music is the platform provided to artists to be able to put their passions on paper, on a canvas, or whatever it may be. But you can't send mixed messages to people. And you know, it's like, look, we're either gonna be this or we're gonna be that, right? Right now. So the first album, we cannot do all of this. If you wanna deal with duality, we do that shit third, fourth album and all of that shit. But I'm glad, because I had to really stop and be like, okay, who are you gonna be, right? Like, they are who they are, and it's good to look up to it and listen to it, but you gotta start forming your own identity. And I'm glad that I had friends close to me that made me realize that in the moment. And again, change is difficult for a lot of people, you know what I'm saying? That's just not easy to swallow, especially when you're wrong. Like, that was the whole point about it. I was really just wrong, trying to, you can't do both. You just can't exist as both. So that was it, though. Other than that, the beautiful thing about UGK, in terms of myself and Pimp and the dynamic between us, was that we never argued about music. Like, there was never, I don't like this beat, I don't like this hook or whatever. We found ways to complement each other all the time. And we never stepped on each other's toes, because we ain't dressed the same, obviously, as I just said, right? But we ain't like the same type of women, cars. He was always a jewelry dude. He always was a dressed up dude like that. I was not. Shirts and shorts, t-shirt, shorts and flip-flops. I did literally the first year touring with just white t-shirt, like thick ass, like Nike shorts and flip-flops. Like, I didn't really care about that in that sense. And it took me a while for me to really realize who I was, right? Because it was only a certain way that I saw myself, but I had to be aware of the public perception of who I was and make sense with that.
Well, it's interesting you talk about sort of this development of your brand and really embracing like a singular messaging, because obviously you guys went through several iterations to becoming the Underground Kings.
Yes.
UGK. Can you tell me a little bit about how you guys thought about the various names and permutations of the group? And
right, so when Pimp and I first became rap partners, we were not technically in a group together. We were part of a collective of people. There were certain groups, there were solo artists, dancers, DJs, producers, and so forth. So Pimp was already in a group with another person, Mitchell Queen, and that was actually, they were called the Underground Kings. I was in another group with a person, Jalon Jackson, and we were the PA Militia. At a certain point, we decided to merge both of those groups, and then we became 4BM, which was 4 Black Ministers, but menace like MENACE, as opposed to not church ministers, like starting shit menace. Yeah, like menace to society menace type motherfuckers. And we recorded several songs under that moniker, one of which, actually the earliest version of Cocaine in the Back of the Ride was a 4 Black Minister song, because the whole idea of it was that we were going to be, Pimp wanted to do all gangster rap music, but over roots reggae. Kind of shit. I don't know how old some of you are. Who was outside in 90, 91? Exactly. Right. But for the six of us that were, you could not go to a club in Houston in 89, 90, 91, 92 without hearing reggae. The biggest club in Houston for many years was Jamaica. It was a reggae club that did like a rap set. So you would be in there and it'd be Shabba Ranks and Cuddy Ranks and all these people for 3 hours and then 30 minutes of rap and then back to the reggae kind of a thing. So there was all of these other different musical movements and happenings that were influencing us at the time. But by the time we as a collective decided to actually professionally pursue this as a career, life started calling for other people's. Mitchell, who was Chad's partner, got a scholarship to Prairie View. He's like, I'm going to play football for Prairie View, you know? I don't know how many of y'all paid attention to Prairie View football in 91, 92, and 93. They won one game in 2 years.
Maybe
That's not Mitchell's fault. I'm not blaming Mitch for that. My partner, Jalon, was an aspiring football player. He was in his junior year. He sees Mitch get a scholarship. He's like, I need to focus on my football shit and quit this rap shit. And eventually, life happened to everybody. We're talking about a group of maybe 16 people. And then one day we looked up and the only people that were serious about actually making a record were me, Pimp, and who became our DJ Bird. And it just became a thing of, Pimp was like, well, I'm done with school. Like, he made up his mind that year that he was done with school. And I said, you know what? I'll give this shit a year, see if it worked. If not, I'll retake my entrance exam and, figure that shit out. And within a calendar year of me making that decision after graduation, I was signed. I had a career. I didn't have like I was in New York signing a record deal. And that's when everything changed. We knew that no one else was really making music in the way that Pimp was making music. Themes were similar. We obviously didn't start any trends, but we were there right as the trend started to become more popular. But we were just different, right? First of all, we were from Port Arthur, we were Trill, right? That made us initially different from everybody, right? Small town guys competing against the big city people, so there was always that dynamic. So even though we made friends and had associations in the big city, we always still felt like we were the little guys. So that was a thing where we didn't want to follow similar musical trends. We chose to stick to our thing. Pimp was like, it doesn't make any sense to try to do what other people are doing when we're already good at what we do.
We left off and you were talking about dedicating 1 year to getting the group off the ground.
Yeah.
During that time, you signed with Big Time Records and you put out 2 EPs independently, locally.
The Southern Way and Band. Band was more of a maxi single kind of a thing.
Once you start to formalize this relationship with Pimp C, did you guys ever sit down and figure out how the economics of the partnership were going to work, how the splits were going to work, or any of that kind of sort of nitty-gritty stuff?
No, not at all. Technically, as far as UGK was concerned, there was 50-50, right? But that was also with the understanding that Pimp was going to be making extra money because he's producing most of the music. Finances was never a situation for UGK. I wasn't really a flashy guy at all, so I was just happy making enough money to pay bills, right? And so I just would kind of, fuck off a lot of my money on just weed and partying and car shit, right?
As one does.
Chad worked harder. Chad did more work because Chad wanted more out of life. He always wanted nice things. He wanted a nice quality of life, a comfortable quality of life for himself and his family. And so because of that, but he was a producer. I wasn't necessarily a producer. I made some beats. I would not call myself a producer by any means. But Chad had a sound that was very much in demand. So he would get a lot more production work than, say, we would get verse work or whatever. So, but that became an issue too, because I remember the first time he made a beat for somebody and I wasn't there. And that was Having Things for Big Mike. And I was so I can cuss, right?
Yeah, of course.
I was so motherfucking mad. I was so, not even motherfucking, I was so motherfucking mad, right? No other, just motherfucking mad because I was like, that's a UGK record. Like, it's you made the beat, it's a UGK beat, you singing the hook. I'm like, that's a UGK record. And y'all didn't put me on the motherfucker. I was really more jealous than anything. And so I told him, I instituted a veto at that point where before he sold a beat to somebody, I had the right to listen to it and decide whether or not we should keep it or not. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't about stunting his growth or not letting him make money. I just didn't want everybody else to get all the dopest shit. Little did I know, I had no idea how much dope shit he had in him at the time. And we were never at a shortage for dope ass music.
Certainly. So after putting out these EPs on Big Time,
Yes.
you end up signing the deal with Jive, which I understand KRS-One fills you in person immediately after putting the ink on the paper that this is maybe not the best decision that you've made. Was that deal, in your estimation, particularly onerous, or was it just sort of the bad in the way that most new artist record deals are bad?
I've heard a lot of horror stories about deals, right? But typically that's about recoupment, right? Like, that's about stealing publishing, that's about percentage, and really about money. The most fucked up thing in the UGK contract was there was a death/jail clause in my contract, which stated that if one of us died or if one of us went to jail, that we could replace that member, but at a lower percentage rate. And I was actually asked if I wanted to exercise this clause when Pimp C went to jail.
And this was put in there by the Jive lawyers or by
Yes,
your
this
lawyers?
was in the original contract I signed in 1992. A death clause. And I could replace my dead friend, but at a lower rate. So yeah, that was the kind of thing. And obviously we had fucked up recoupment and all of that. And there were amendments in this contract that we signed in 1992 that we didn't fully fix until Pimp came home from prison in like 2005.
I'm curious because now, because of all the analytics, new artists are able to get much more artist-friendly deals. You guys went into your deal, in the sort of fairly unusual in that time situation of having sold some records independently. Did that not afford you a certain amount of leverage in the negotiation?
Well, the problem is that, so this is what happened with UGK. We released the same week as Criss Cross released. Criss Cross had the #1 record in the world. And we were outselling them in mom and pop stores and through wholesalers in Houston, from Houston to like Lafayette. And so this became a big thing where everybody wanted to know who this group was. And so the number on the back of the cassette was the number to the record store that the guy that owned the record company, he owned the record store and I actually worked in the record store. So then one day we get a call and it's from like Warlock Records, right? You people probably have never heard
Jungle
of Warlock
Brothers.
Records. Jungle Brothers is very small. I don't think many people here know who the Jungle Brothers is. No disrespect. You just had to be old as shit to know what we're talking about right now. And then it became like Select Records, and it been all of these different record companies, all the way up to Def Jam, and every single record company called us within that week. And then we're just like, damn, this is dope. Everybody want to fuck with us. And then Saturday, nobody calls, right? The phone does not ring all day Saturday. And then Sunday, nobody calls. And we started thinking we overplayed our hands. Like we should have entertained some of this shit. We got scared. We thought we fucked up because we had never been in this situation before. So we were like, whoever called Monday, we sign it, fuck that. And the first people to call was Jive Records. And that's why we entertained it. So we never even went back and forth on negotiating, right? We were just like, all right, whoever fucking calls, we're gonna sign. Jive called and they flew us out to New York, and we went in and they ordered Dallas Barbecue, which is a barbecue company in New York.
There's one around the corner from me.
Bruh, coming from Houston, Texas, the South, I'm talking about some bullshit. I get the gesture. And I understood the gesture, right? What they were trying to do. That shit was terrible. And then and here's the thing, right? This is how record deals or any kind of deals typically work, right? They put like a 75, 80-page contract in front of you, right? And you see these yellow tabs coming out the side, and there were 3 yellow tabs, right? So the first yellow tab was like, okay, y'all wanted these amount of videos and all of that. Okay, this is where you get that, sign here. And then it was like, okay, you guys want this kind of money in advance and all that. And the check is sitting right there, right? You see the check in front of you on the table. You know what I'm saying? So you're just trying to sign whatever the fuck they want you to sign so you can get that check. I'm literally signing my life away because I'm only looking at 3 pages of an 80-page contract. So there's only 3 pages giving me what I want. I'm not paying attention that the other 77 pages are giving them what they want. But I'm an artist, I'm hungry, I'm young. I just want to be able to say, I signed a deal, right? I'm in New York, all of that. It's cap, right? It's all cap. We signed a deal and we go out in the hallway, right? Like, we don't go out in a minute to talk. And we go out and we high five and we like, yeah, we did this shit. And we see KRS-One coming down the hallway. Like, oh shit, now it's real New York, because I'm at a New York record label, I'm signing the deal, and here comes KRS-One, one of the most dominant figures in hip hop at the time. And we introduced ourselves, hey, we're UGK, this is Pimp C, I'm Bun B, we came up here to sign. They're like, did y'all sign yet? And I was like, yeah, we just signed. Fuck, damn. Good luck, young man. Like, so I literally didn't enjoy the shit 5 minutes, right? And I went from thinking I did the best thing I've ever done for myself in my life to realizing I probably just did the worst thing I could do in my life. And literally from that point on, we were almost actively in a state of regret renegotiation. Literally, without even leaving, the ink wasn't even dry on the goddamn paper, And that's why I tell people, man, make sure you really know what you're getting yourself into, right? We had hired an attorney that was a former attorney of Jive Zamba, the publishing company. So we assume hiring somebody that know their system that can work for us. No, we hired somebody that created and structured a deal that worked in their favor, and there was a $50,000 check for her that didn't come from us in this entire negotiation, in those 77 pages I was talking about. And so literally from that point forward, our whole career in our minds is to try to make music that becomes popular enough, that sells enough, that we're in a position to negotiate.
I was gonna say, those first 3 albums experience, increasing success with each release,
yes.
But it's still mostly a regional thing. At that point, did you what was your feeling about what this quote unquote major label brought to the table, considering that you were outselling Crisscross with an independent cassette, at the outset of your career?
Well, for us, it was exposure, right? Like they were already in the business of dealing with college radio, dealing with terrestrial radio, right? Venues and touring and all of that type of stuff. They were already very steeped in that. We didn't have any idea of how to do that other than little shows we were doing. My first show was at a VFW hall after bingo. You know what I'm saying? And some of the people stayed over. They thought bingo was gonna happen. They thought there was more bingo, and it ended up being us. It was maybe 12 people in a VFW hall. You know what I'm saying? Our second show was at a club called Kokomo's on the north side. The stage was only big enough for 2 people. So when we did Short Texas that had 3 people on it, one of us had to get down. So the dude that did the second verse could get up, and then he had to get down. And so everything was very modest in the early years. You know what I'm saying? And once you sign to like a major label, right, then the scope and the scale of everything grows immediately. We didn't know what to ask for because we were young. The artists, everybody, the CEO, none of us had ever done this before. So we didn't even really know what we were supposed to ask for from the label. And the label, on the other hand, didn't really understand us culturally. So the things that they would normally do, the places they would normally send artists to, they couldn't really do it with us because the magazine didn't know or the video show didn't know, but some form or fashion of who we were stopped us from really excelling. And really it was just because it was hard to be our A&R, right? They weren't coming down to Houston. They weren't asking the questions. They didn't really want to understand the culture, and they tried to do it like they did everything else, and we pretty much just got lost in the sauce.
I was going to say, I know you've talked about the label switching some of the production on the
Yes.
second album.
First album.
First album, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys don't have, a Dante Ross type A&R, who is sort of attributed as a Svengali. Who was the person that was messing with your art?
I have no idea. Again, and this is another one of those things in that contract, right? So they sent us the album. They sent me my album. We had turned in all the music, mixed all the records, and they sent me my album. And I want to say at least 3-4 songs had different music, like totally reproduced. And this album was getting ready to come out in like 2 weeks. It was already pressed, it was already shipped and sent to stores. And so we listened to the shit. I'm like, this ain't us, what is this? And so we reached out to the label, said, well, those samples didn't clear. So we had to remake those records. And they were like, well, why didn't y'all send it to us to remake? We could have remade the shit. Chad said, right here, we making music like right now. We're like, well, contractually, we didn't really have to, and we didn't really want to waste the time, and you guys sending us more records with more samples, so we just had a producer go in and kind of just fill in the blanks for you guys. Like they was doing me a fucking favor, right? You know what I'm saying? And it totally just misrepresented who we were, what we were trying to do. We couldn't get past it, couldn't look past it, and so we started beefing with the label, and then we don't talk to the label for like a year and a half. Like they're just like, okay, well, if that's how you guys feel, just fuck it. Call us when you guys feel different. And so we're just sitting there like, what the fuck do we do? Like, you know what I'm saying? They cutting us off. So we couldn't really, the music wasn't what it was supposed to be. So the impact was not what we hoped it would be, right? So and because we didn't really sell any real records and the recoup rate was fucked up, even with the records we did sell, we were still in the red, right? There was no money to be paid for us. So like, well, there's no money to pay you, but we can give you an advance on the next record. The minute you take the advance on the next record, now you're deeper in debt than you already are. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of where we found ourselves, right? Because we didn't really know any other way to proceed. But that's when we started trying to figure out, okay, well, how can we amend this contract? How can we do this? And we went through a couple of different people we brought to the table. We worked with Wendy Day. We worked with, God, I can't think of his name right now. Red, what is Gladys Knight's ex-husband? R. Kelly's manager. He was R. Kelly's manager.
Okay.
Barry Hankerson.
Oh, yeah.
Barry Hankerson. A lot of different people tried to come in. Barry Hankerson actually had a lot of power in the building because, of course, he was R. Kelly's manager prior to, I don't know when R. Kelly started that shit. But, and so we had a lot of different people try to come in and try to help us and educate us. And then the record label would do something else. Super Tight, we got into it over some shit because Super Tight was actually supposed to be a double album. One was supposed to be a Pimp centered album built around the soundtrack of the Mac. That was gonna be like Pimp's solo album. And then mine was more of a street album in the vein of Scarface. So some of those songs are still on there, like Underground Nigga and Return of Trill Nigga. Some of those are still from that double album experience, but like at least 10 of those songs, like we can't clear that, we can't afford to clear. Even with Menace to Society. We had submitted a song called 93 Mac for Menace to Society, and they didn't refuse to clear the sample. And they were like, what else are y'all doing? Like, we just did a remix of Pocket Full of Stones. Any samples? Nope, all right, give me that. And that's how that got on Menace to Society. It wasn't even a song we wanted to do because we looked at the movie, they gave us certain scenes, like, can you make a song for one of these scenes? And we made that for like him riding up on the Daytons and shit like that. But they just kept Computer Love in there because it kind of looked good and sounded good. But I mean, consistently through our career, we were fighting for independence. And we're riding dirty, like, we were like, we don't want money. We don't want any money, no cash advance. We're doing shows and things are going good for us as a group. We were like, just give us equipment. We want this equipment. We don't want to go to a studio because every studio we worked at, they owned, right? So they would be paying for our studios to them and then charging us, right? It was all this crazy accounting that they did to keep us in debt. So we're like, we don't want any money. We don't want to work at your studio. We'll do it at home. We don't want anything. Just put out the album we give you. That's all we wanted. Just put out, we're gonna make the fucking album, and when we give it to you, if it's something wrong, give us a chance to fix it. Just put out the fucking album that we give you. And that was Riding Dirty. And that was the first time UGK ever got to truly represent themselves on record. #1 record in the country, gold album, no videos, seminal project, right? And from that point on, they started to realize that we understood ourselves better than they did, but they didn't want to give us that kind of power, right? They didn't want to give us that kind of power. We never wanted to be like New Yorkers. We just wanted New Yorkers to respect what we did. We wanted artists that we looked up to and that we thought were really good to look at us without bias and to give us whatever appreciation or respect that we deserved. And so for us, it was really about peers more than anything, not about regions. You know what I'm saying? If New York didn't want to fuck with it as a whole, that's cool. But it would be really dope if Big Daddy Kane and Marley Marl and Coogee Rap and people that we looked up to actually thought that we were good at what we did. But the core of it was always to rep the South. But Big Pimpin' as a song itself is very singular, right? There's no song sonically that sounds like it before. There's no song that sounds like it after. It was just a very unique moment in hip hop where we were at this highest level of excess, the highest level of visual presentation, access to anything you could possibly want, with one of the biggest people in the world, one of the biggest producers in the world, and two dudes that are, some of the best underground artists that haven't really had a national exposure. A lot of really great things came together to create that moment. And the next thing you know, this is literally the biggest record in that calendar year.
You do these 3 records that are cult classics and eventually capped with this gold record where you're really getting sort of a national acclaim. And then you have a 4 or 5 year hiatus from dropping records, during which you do 2 very, very consequential features, Sippin' on Some Scissor and Big Pimpin'.
Right.
I'm curious, how did those 2 features change both the trajectory of your careers as a group, but also your relationship with the label and all of that stuff?
Well, I think it gives us an opportunity to show that UGK in its purest form can be accepted and appreciated by almost anyone that likes good music, right? That was something that we wanted to prove, and we didn't get to really prove that very often through our music, right? But by being able to create these blockbuster records with artists, like Jay-Z was arguably the biggest rapper in the world at that time, and we were able to bring an energy that was not dependent, right? Like UGK didn't necessarily need Jay-Z at that time. Jay-Z didn't necessarily need UGK. And because of that, the pairing was seen as more organic and authentic, right? Because how do these dudes neither one of them do what the other dudes do. So it's really more about mutual appreciation, right? But then that kind of sends a signal to the label that, okay, maybe these guys are a bigger deal than we give them credit for. And then maybe if we get behind it, these guys could really be something big, which was bullshit because right after Big Pimpin', and we're getting ready to do the next album, which was Dirty Money. And the whole thing was, hey, guys, why don't we go and buy a beat from Timbaland, go buy a verse from Jay-Z, go get a video from Hype Williams, and try to catch lightning in a bottle again, right? And I'm like, well, that sounds good, but that's gonna be very expensive. That's gonna cost a shit ton of money to buy the verse, shit ton of money to buy the beat, and even more money for the video. If we don't do a song with Jay-Z, do we still get a Hype Williams video? Like, if we don't get a beat from Timbaland, do we still get that kind of budget for the beat that Chad's gonna make? And there was never a no. It was always, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to do another song with Timbaland? Why wouldn't you want to do another record with Jay-Z? Why wouldn't you want another Hype Williams video? I'm like, I want that stuff, but I don't want it with them. I want everything you're talking about in the scale and the grandeur of the effort that you're trying to make, but for us, purely for us. And then I realized that they were not gonna spend that money on us. They thought it was really based on the people that we worked with. And then Sippin' on Syrup comes, and you realize they're not huge. Like 3 6 Mafia is like we are. They're respected in their genre
they
and
were
in their
similar
region.
position as
but
you.
yeah, but they're just like us, and we still make a huge record. Big Pimpin' was the biggest commercial record in the world that year. No record played on the radio more than that record anywhere in the world on any given day. And Sippin' on Scissor was about as street as you could get. It was as hood as you could get. UGK and 3 6 Mafia, that's the hood. That's the gutter, the trap, the ghetto, whatever you want to call it. That's the streets, right? Personified. And we were able to exist in both of those spaces at the same time being exactly who we were. You know what I'm saying? And so that became a totally different issue because even though we had both of those things, it really didn't give us any negotiating power. And so we were like, well, we got feature work, we got show money, fuck it, you know? And we just didn't want to do anything. And I remember sitting with Lear Cohen. Lear Cohen was the head of Def Jam at the time. And Lear Cohen was like, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah. He was like, so when we did Big Pimpin', we went to Trinidad and Tobago during Carnival. Well, some of us did. Chad never showed up. Chad never showed up, and the main video girl, Gloria Velez, never showed up in Trinidad. That's because they were in Miami on some other shit together. But Leo was like, he was like, you guys are so stubborn. You're so stubborn. He says, how long is your deal? I said, we have a 5-album deal. This was album number 3. He says, right. He says, and how long have you been on the label? I said, 8 years. He said, right, that's 3 years too long because you're fucking stubborn. He said, let me guess. They didn't want to do something. You got mad. They stopped answering and you went and did other shit. He said, you could have just gave them the fucking album and been done with it by now. He says, and now look, you still got 2 more albums to do. He says, can you and your brother just stop being so fucking stubborn, give these people the music so you can go out and be rich by yourself? Like that was just like, which really meant go out and come honor that deal and then come over here with us, kind of a thing, right? And, you know, we had to really look at that at you know, yeah, maybe we have been stubborn. Maybe we haven't been doing this right. But we also didn't really have any negotiating power. And so at this point, you know, we're at the height of our fame. We do have the negotiating power, and we're in a position to actually take advantage of it, and then other things happen.
I would say, yes. Well, Dirty Money comes out, and to your point, it feels like, at least as a consumer, like there was sort of that expectation of this is going to be the moment that the group ascends.
Yes.
And it didn't quite play out. It played out more like, okay, this is another great record.
Yeah, but it came with restrictions, right? So the same level of freedom that we had just been afforded with Riding Dirty, some of that kind of
got pulled back. Interesting. So I was going to say, what was it that enabled you guys, because it really did feel like with the Underground Kings album, you got the full force of their muscle behind the record, and, you know, both the single obviously went International Players Anthem, was a huge smash, but the record as a whole also ended up selling tremendously.
So Pimp came home from prison. Jive came down, I want to say, the next day, maybe 2 days, Red? The next day, Jive Records was there, the Four Seasons Hotel, and we go up to the big suite, and we sit down, everybody hugs, and everybody's happy to see Chad. And the first thing they did was apologize. They apologized for not trusting us. They apologized for not believing in us and not having faith in Chad. More than anything else, like, you always had the vision. We fought against the vision. The one time we let you execute it, huge album. We fought against it again. We're done fighting, right? We're done fighting.
You had also come out and put out a solo album that had sold 750,000 units at this point.
Well, yeah, and so that became another issue, right? When I asked them, I told them I wanted to do the solo album. They brought up the clause first, right? I said, no, I'm not. I don't want to exercise that clause. And then they told me, they said, well, we're not interested in the Bun B album. You're the sidekick. And there's only so much I could argue it. I knew Pimp was the star, right? I knew Pimp was the heart of it, you know what I'm saying? But I wasn't just sitting there alone. I was doing some good shit too, you know? And so I was like, well, can I go do it somewhere else? And they were like, well, where? And I was like, well, Jay Prince wants to do it in Rap-A-Lot. Oh, I don't know, we gotta talk about that. Right, we gotta talk about that. And so they realized if anybody could figure out how to make it work, it was gonna be him. So they agreed to let me do it on Rap-A-Lot, of course, with them getting a little piece of the pie. I ended up and it was a deal with Rap-A-Lot and Asylum Records. I am still, to this day, the #1 selling album on Asylum Records. And that was the apology to me in the room, was that we apologize for not believing in your vision. But their thing was, if Rap-A-Lot could sell 750, we could have sold 2 million, right? But they wouldn't have, because they wouldn't have let me. They wouldn't have, literally, I did this entire album, me and that man up there, Ansel Jennings. We put together every feature, every production, the mixers, the engineers, every facet of this album. We put that together. Like, literally, with minimal cash. The first Trill album, was it even 40,000? Did we even spend that much money? 50,000 with studio time for Trill. Mixing, mastering, every beat, every feature, all of it under $50,000. You know what I'm saying? And we sold 750,000 copies. We made damn good money. And so I don't really believe it was ever about them misunderstanding the talent. They missed money. That's what it was really about. They missed money. And they realized that they were getting in the way of their own fucking money. And they literally they gave us huge advance, a huge budget. The beauty of it was that we literally signed off for the last 2 albums on that day. If we had not done that, then the 5th album would still have been an issue. The family would not have been able to get money. We would have had to renegotiate. Someone had to step in. Because of the fact that we had signed off on both albums, when he passed away and it was time to do the posthumous album, the budget was already cleared. The family was already able to get money. It was a very, very easy thing to do. But the Underground Kings album was full budget. Rap with whoever you want to rap with. Get beats from whoever you want to get beats with. Chat with like, who you want to rap to? What's some shit you been wanting to rap to? Fuck that. Who you want to rap to? I want to rap on the Swiss Beats. I want to rap on the Swiss Beats track. And we paid God knows how much to Swiss Beats. And then it was, the other thing was, Ronald Isley, and I'll keep it short because we're way over time. Ronald Isley was dealing with tax issues at the time. And so we were like, we want to do a song with Ronald Isley so we can put some money in his pocket, because our first record, Tell Me Something Good, was Summer Breeze by Isley Brothers. And there are several, one day, there's so many different pivotal moments in UGK's career where Isley Brothers come into play. And you know, we just wanted to be able to sew into someone that had done so much for us. And we paid him I don't even think he wanted that much. We paid him, we were like, we're giving you $50,000. We want to give you $50,000 to come sing on this song. And he was very grateful. He was such a kind man. And it's really one of the highlights of my career. Like literally the first UGK record we recorded when he came home was Here We Go Again. And that was featuring Ronald Isley. And that's how we wanted to jump back in the game together.
It's crazy. I know in that period after Pimp comes back from jail and you guys record the record, your relationship became a little bit strained as you went in different directions. And I'm curious, just, you know, this is someone that you have been creative partners with since teenage years. You know, he obviously is a big personality. You
Yes.
are also a creator and, you know, given to your own mercurial ways. What is the key to maintaining that relationship as, you know, you grow and change and circumstances change and success changes, and keeping it together?
It's really about communication, right? So Pimp came home from prison a much bigger star than he was when he left. There was a lot of demand for Pimp C, not just UGK, but a lot of demand for Pimp C. And he wanted to go out and try it as a solo artist. And you know, I had been on the road doing shows for years. It took me 2 years to really figure out how to do a UGK show properly without Pimp C on stage with me. And he thought he could cover that same ground very quickly. He realized that it was not the same thing. A lot of things had changed since he had come home, and he didn't really feel comfortable doing everything by himself. Like the dynamic, I do good by myself, Pimp does good by himself, we do great together. It was always about the group. There was never going to be bigger success by the solo. It was always about the unit and what we represented. And we were yin to each other's yang, you know what I'm saying? So he called me and we had a very long conversation, and we talked through everything that we were dealing with at the time. I don't want to get too specific. But the last thing we said, I told him I loved him. He told me he loved me, and he was dead 2 days later. And as crazy as that was, I got closure. So many people didn't get closure. So many people close to him did not get to say what they wanted to say, did not hear what they hoped they would have heard. It was just a very, very strange time for everyone. And it was very hard to really grasp the idea of someone so full of life not being here anymore. We're dealing with it now with a good friend of mine, Sponto, the founder of Born and Raised. We're dealing with it with Big Pokey here in Houston, you know? It's just, you don't know how much time you have with people. And so you hear people about it all the time, like, it's small, it's petty, get over it. If we don't do it now, we won't come together like this until somebody dies. And that's typically what happens. So I say all of that to really implore you, if there's somebody you got an issue with and it's petty, you know, but you're waiting for them to be the bigger person, just go ahead and do it. Be the bigger person and be done with it. If you don't want to fuck with them no more, don't fuck with them no more. But make peace and don't leave shit hanging. Don't leave shit hanging, because you don't want to be in that room looking at that casket wishing you would have said something. First time we actually recorded something together probably would have been pre-production at his house in the den. That's where a lot of the recording happened. He was originally doing the music in the bedroom, but then the music kind of outgrew it. Like, the bigger the equipment he acquired, it kind of outgrew it. Like, we never had like a studio at the house. He never had that kind of a setup until many years later. So it's really just about, you know, like little 4 tracks, a little drum machine, you know, trying to lay some kind of rough vocals, passing the mic back and forth kind of a thing. But we transitioned into a studio fairly quickly. I remember when the Chronic dropped and everybody started putting those synths and all that stuff in the music, and Pimp was like, we're not gonna do any of that because we gotta keep doing what we do and representing what we are. So Pimp always had a very clear idea sonically of what this group was gonna sound like and represent, and I just tried to fill in the blanks as best I could.
You talked quite vividly about Pimp C's passing. And, you know, obviously that event was something that I'm sure you had to, on a personal level, grieve. But also on a professional level, this is the man that you have been making music with for, you know, 17, 18 years at that point.
Right.
Maybe closer to even 20. What was your process in terms of how did you think about what your career and your life would look like in his absence?
We had already been through that with Pimp going to jail, having to figure out, like, I had never been responsible for an album before. Every time we recorded, all of this, UGK was Pimp C's baby, right? He lived and breathed UGK. And so all of the heavy lifting was really done by Pimp C. Pimp C was producing the records, was engineering and mixing these albums and co-mastering these albums, but he's living and breathing with this music every day. I would come in, lay my verse, give my input on different things. Sometimes I write the hooks on different songs, and then I could just go back to doing what I wanted to do. The ultimate responsibility for what a UGK album eventually was gonna be when you got it was Chad's, and he wanted that responsibility. He didn't want anybody else to have it because nobody else cared about it as much as he did. Him going to jail, I'm realizing that the only way I can really keep the group alive and keep his name alive is to continue to record music, but as a solo artist. So now I'm responsible for every verse, every hook. I gotta pick the beats. And the most important thing, we gotta figure out the sequence. You can record a lot of music that's jamming and all of that, but if you put it in the wrong order, people won't feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a whole process in itself as to how do we start this album? Where does it go? When do we take it up? When do we bring it down? How do we balance these energies, these personalities on these different records, right? And so I'm responsible for all of that type of shit now. Now, I had a lot of help. Of course, I keep making reference to my manager up there. And I could not have done a lot of these things that I've been able to do without him. But it showed us that we could do an album. And due to the success of Trill, we knew we could make a successful album. But that was a Bun B album, right? Now I have to make a UGK album. Now, the reality is that the majority of the music was already recorded. Everything that we needed as far as Pimp was already recorded, but there was a couple of different places where we had to fill in gaps, right? Now, at this point in my career, I have access to everybody, right? anybody would want to be on this last UGK album, but the shit gotta make sense, right? First thing I can't do, I cannot get beats from people that Pimp did not think was jamming, right? And it was very, very strange to see like who Pimp actually fucked with and who he didn't as far as producers and their sounds. So we had to honor that, right? And then we had to think of, okay, we can't put no rappers on here that I didn't want to put nobody on there that didn't actually know Chad. You know what I'm saying? So there was that. And then we got to do the order and then all of this stuff right there. But then I don't know if I was really prepared for the emotional weight of releasing a UGK album like that. You know what I'm saying? After the fact, even with the album that we did together, he never saw the height of that. You know what I'm saying? So it took everything. It took a lot for me. I went through a very, very low point in my life, very severe depression, a lot of drinking to try to cope with this stuff. And it just didn't do me any good. None of it was doing me any good. It was a whole pity party I was throwing at the bottom of a Hennessy bottle. And my wife was like, this ain't gonna work. You got to get back to church. You got to reconnect with God. And it really repurposed everything for me. You know what I'm saying? I started to look at life, as I always should, as being bigger than just me. You know what I'm saying? And my responsibilities to people who have walked this walk with me for so long. And, I was really, really proud of the collective effort that we were able to put together and honor him with that album. I believe he would have said this whole jamming, you know what I'm saying? You did it, Pee Wee. But it takes a support system. None of these things could have been accomplished on my own. You know what I'm saying? Everybody needs a support system. Are there things that you could do without help? Yeah, and there will be things in life that you will have to do where you can't get help, right? But if there are people that are willing to support you and be there in your corner, and they genuinely love you and care for you, you don't have a good reason to not let them do that. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to let people hold your hand. It's okay for people to give you an ear, give you a shoulder, you know what I'm saying? Give you a hug, whatever it takes, you know what I'm saying? Because as much as you think you've been through, and I've been through a lot of shit, when that happened, I wasn't ready. I was not ready. And you think that everything you've been through can prepare you for what you're going through, and to a certain extent it can, but we still all need help. We still all need help. And I'm so glad that I had real, genuine help, on the construction side of the album, picking the beats, you know what I'm saying? Features, everybody making themselves available for us as possible, in that one united effort to honor Pimp the right way. And I think we did that to the best of our abilities. We would have needed him to do better. Absolutely.
At this point, you've now been recording as a solo artist for almost as long as you were in UGK.
Which is crazy.
Not quite, but
we're getting there.
How has your approach to your art changed, and how has your process changed?
Well, I know exactly what people want from me, right? I understood the dynamic of UGK. I knew what people gravitated to Chad for. I knew what people gravitated to me for. You can't fill his shoes, and I'm not trying to do that at all. I got to stay true to who I am. But it's really been about collaborative effort for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not a producer. I had the best job in the world being in UGK, because all we needed was me and Chad, and we can bring you an album. Like we didn't need features. We didn't need beats from nobody. Put me and Chad in the studio, and we will bring you an album. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I needed help with that. I actually really had to count on different people to do that, right? So luckily, some of my best friends in the world are producers and rappers, you know what I'm saying, and engineers and people like that. And so people gave me everything I needed. It was just a matter of me kind of picking through stuff. But it was also time for me to kind of stand on my own too, and really give people a deeper dive into who I am and what I represent, and my care for my concerns for people, and wanting to be a better example to people, but still standing on business and not being about no bullshit, And it's for me, people have been walking with me since 92, right? And for those that have been walking with me since 92, if you were where I was then, you might be where I'm at now, right? We all got families, we got responsibilities, we got medication we got to take every day. Like, you know, it's a lot of shit that goes with it. And so I'm trying to be as true to who I am in real time when I make this music. You know what I'm saying? I'm still aware of how the streets operate. I understand that I may not be in the streets as I was, but I still understand the dynamics, and they continue to evolve. And UGK has always really tried to lay everything out for people so you have a full understanding of what you might be getting yourself into, you know, but I don't know how much of the youth I actually speak to in my music. So I'm just trying to be authentic to me and talk about the way I see the world and, you know, what could we be doing as OGs and mentors and big brothers and unk and school, whatever they call it. Don't be calling me school though, like for real. Like that's the one. You call me OG, unk, all big bro, all that shit, that's cool. We have some problems with school. But to be very, very honest, a lot of us, not myself, but there are many people who, quite frankly, can't go back and talk to the youth. That dynamic just doesn't exist. That respect level just doesn't really exist for everybody. You know what I'm saying? So I try to speak, you know, I try to do a lot more outside of the music because I feel like the music at this point is, you know, we're just entertaining. You know, we're having fun with it. But I'm really just trying to talk about where I am in life and how I'm seeing everything. But for me, I think I get a lot more out of being out in the world, actually being amongst the people. You know what I'm saying? The music is just to let people know, hey, I can still do this shit. I'm still good at it. I can fuck with anybody. I like to do a lot of records with young rappers now, just so they know you're good, but you still ain't that good. You know what I'm saying? But I also know that I can actually put some light on people, you know, and so I'm trying to do the best I can to be a good judge of character, to make sure, because a Bun B cosign, I understand, can go a long way for the right person with the right song. And so you don't want to give that kind of opportunity to a fuckboy, right? Like, I'm just being real. You don't want to make the mistake of putting a bad person in a position of power and influence. You know what I'm saying? So I typically turn down most of the work that people want to do with me, because sometimes I just don't have enough on you to know if I should be fucking with you. It used to be a lot easier to verify who somebody was, because you could literally call one or two people in town and be like, hey, who's so-and-so? Never heard of them niggas in my life. All right, cool. Don't worry about it. You know, he say whoop, 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 wham. I never seen him before in my life. He's nobody here, type of thing. But now there's so many different levels in which people are impacting in their community, right? Everybody that's the shit in their town ain't on TV, right? You know, ain't on the internet. Sometimes you got to go somewhere and actually see that shit for real, you know? And I remember when I wasn't everybody's cup of tea. So I'm not trying to sit around and judge people anyway. But there's some people that I can connect with, create with, and so into, and some people I can't, you know what I'm saying? And it's really not, I'm not meant to make a record with everybody. I can make a record with anybody, but I'm not supposed to make a record with just anybody. It's got to make sense, right? Because they'll be like, all right, I understand that dude is famous, but why is Bun B rapping? That don't even make sense. Like me and Lil Tyler, like, Lil Tyler is the shit. He really speaks it to a generation of people, you know? But I don't know, what we supposed to talk about? Together, tennis shoes maybe? Denim tears clothes or something like that? Look, I understand my position, Noah, and I understand how important it is for me to play my position because people are looking at me, right? And so I'm trying to lead the next generation by example. I can make music and I can do all these speeches, but it's about what people see, right? It's about how people see me in real time in this world. I could say I'm doing some good shit, but everybody could say that. Anybody could donate $20, but who's really out there trying to do something for real, consistently for people? I want to be the right example so people like, if they want to do something, particularly with transitioning out of music into other shit, I want to try to be an example of how to take all this cultural equity, right? All of this blood, sweat, and tear equity that you've built up making other people rich, making record companies rich and CEOs rich and your sponsors rich and your tour promoters rich, you know what I'm saying? And finding a way to monetize that shit in a way that you can capitalize off of it. Because you're the one that did all the hard work in the first place.
That is an excellent bridge to Trill Burgers. Speaking of things that you have put 30 years into building the equity of, the Trill brand is something that, you know, is wholly owned by UGK, and you have taken that and now transferred that and commodified it into a product for the first time in your career. Can you tell me, how did that happen and why burgers?
Well, it wasn't particularly, like I said, I want to do a burger, right? I'm a fat dude, I eat most of everything. But I've been having a food blog with my friend Premium Pete for about 10 years now. And
You Gotta Eat This.
yeah, it's called YouGottaEatThis.com. And for years, we had both been looking for different ways to actually get into the food business. He got in there a little earlier. He developed his grandmother's pasta sauce, and he's been doing very well with that. I got a call one day from a friend of mine named Nick Scurfield. And Nick was like, hey, do you remember Andy Wynn? I was like, yeah, I do remember Andy Wynn. I saw him recently in town. Andy Wynn was a guy that had a clothing line. I had met him at Magic with his clothing line about maybe 8, 9 years ago. His clothing line was called I Am King. He had a hat called I Am King. I'm obviously Underground King. I was like, give me that hat. And I wore the hat the whole time. And, you know, we became acquaintances. Not the best of friends, but we did get to know each other. And he came back and Nick was like, well, Andy's got this new burger concept that he wants to do and wants to see if you want to be a partner. And I was like, I'll take the meeting. Again, I'm a big boy. I'll go eat the burger and see what it tastes like. But I honestly didn't know if I really wanted the responsibility and all of that. I was like, I don't even know him like that. Like, let me go eat the burger and see what it's like. And then I remember I ate the burger and it was like, I was like, damn, this is the best burger I ever had in my life. Like, and it's different. And it had onions on it, and I hate onions. Like, just on general principle, right? I hate onions. And I ate this burger because I wanted to know exactly what it tastes like. And I was like, this is the greatest shit in the world. And so they offered me 2 options. They offered me, basically, we'll make you the face of the brand. We'll pay you for your likeness. Come out, twice a month at a pop-up, show your face, take some pictures, whatever. Or we could give you a piece of the company. I wanted the piece of the company, right? But I also had to realize that in order to make that work, because licensing is nothing. I just show up, smile, get the check, go home. Ownership, now I got to put money in, I got to put time in, energy and effort. And I was like, man, do I really, really want to do this, you know? And I really had to really have this talk with myself. And then I went back and I ate the burger again. And I said, yeah, I think I do. I said, I think I do. But I was, right before we did our first pop-up, I remember thinking to myself, what if this burger only tastes good to me? Right? Because I have a very weird palate, you know, I'm very different with food. I don't want to get too deep into it. But I eat a lot of things different than other people eat it. And I was like, maybe this shit just weird. Maybe this burger just good to me. And I sat there that first day in Atlanta. It was about 100 people showed up, and it was just like this. It was super hot, you know. And so I'm walking the line with water, making sure people are hydrated. And I'm watching people come in and try the burger. And the motherfuckers look, I was like, I bet that's how I look when I ate that motherfucker, right? Because it was like, you know, food is real good. You bite it, you eat it, and then you're like, wait, and you look at it, right? Because you're almost surprised at how good it can be. And I don't know about y'all, but that's how I feel every time I eat this burger. I don't know who ate it tonight and what your experience was.
It is a fantastic burger.
But this burger is real, you know? And for a long time, you know, doing this, pushing this, I'm trying to put it in front of people because I don't have a brick and mortar, so there's nowhere for people to get it from me. So I gotta literally keep bringing the burger to people, right? And every time I bring it to somebody, I'm like, yeah, man, let me eat this shit. You know, I fuck with burgers and shit. And they, God damn, B, what is, you know? And as we go more and more, people like, no, that's his friends. And of course they gonna say, you know, his shit is good. And until they get it themselves. And then you eat that motherfucker, this burger is real. You know what I'm saying? This burger was free tonight. If you ain't like it, I get your money back. I give you gas money back, your outfit, whatever. This burger is real, you know? But I do have some good friends that have come in to support me. I'll tell you a funny story. Last year we went to Coachella and Toby was performing. And I told Toby, I got a burger, I want you to try my burger. Toby like, yeah, OG, you know, send it to me, I'm gonna eat it at Coachella. And this year at Coachella, he was sitting with Olu from Earth Gang. He say, Olu, I ain't gonna lie, last year when the OG sent me the burger, I thought I was gonna have to lie to him about it. He was like, I was gonna eat it and smile on camera and shit. But, you know, but he was like pleasantly surprised. I wouldn't have put Trill on this burger. Like, Trill is bigger than me, it's bigger than UGK, it's more representative of Port Arthur, the city, and the environment that I come out of, and how hard it is to make something, and how good it feels to be successful coming out of that environment. That's really what this burger represents, presenting the best of yourself to the world. And there is no part of me better than this fucking burger right now. I'm telling you, I can rap good. This burger, if this burger was a rapper, he'd be busting my ass. This would be like Hove meets Cole meets Kendrick meets Jesus, like on a microphone. And but it's not just me. You know, I know a lot of y'all look online and be like, man, Bun B is killing this right now. It's a team of people, right? I have some great partners, Nick and Mike and Nando and Andy. Like, we put a lot into this. We built this brand up. We lost everything in the middle of all of this. We lost everything, every dollar, everything. And you know, a lot of us were like, you know, should we even really continue? Luckily, I've had enough life experience to have built something up, watch it almost fall all the way down and build that shit back up. So I'm like, look, we got a good name, we got a good product, we can still make money, bro. Like, don't get it twisted. The burger's still the burger. We can make more money, but we can't create this again. You know what I'm saying? And 2 weeks later, Good Morning America called, say, we heard you got a good burger, do you want to compete in this national competition? We won on a Tuesday. We went to New York on Thursday, and we competed on Friday and won in the middle of Times Square, live on TV in front of millions of people. I didn't even know how big a deal Good Morning America was until I got there, right? I did not know it was like the #1 show, like in America. Like, it was so much to it. And like, everybody's mama people started calling me because their mama was calling. It skews to an older demographic, right? And so everybody's mama and auntie and grandmother is seeing this, and they call, hey, have you had the rapper's burger? No, mama, I haven't had that. I told them that burger look good, I want that burger, you know? But man, I'm so blessed to have a second chance, right? To do right by what I've been given. Because there was a lot of things I got right, a lot of things I got wrong, a lot of things we had planned and intended that never came into fruition, you know? A lot of things I got wrong, a lot of things people did wrong to us. And so we never really got everything I feel like UGK deserved, from accolades to finances to exposure. You know, I don't think we ever really got that. I think in retrospect, right, we have gotten, I think our legacy is cemented. But this is the one where I think if I do this right, I can get what I missed, right? We have a great product that everybody recognizes, that everybody is satisfied with. People enjoy the product. We enjoy presenting the product. We make good money from the product, you know what I'm saying, without having to sacrifice any level of integrity. I don't have to compromise my principles. I don't have to subscribe to a particular ideology. I want everybody to eat this bitch. I want everybody to eat this burger. Because maybe here's the thing, when you go to Trill Burgers, there's a line. There's always a line. I'm working on it, right? But there's always a line. But my cousin Nick made a good point. My cousin Nick said, you meet people in the line you would have never met, but you all got something in common, because that's why you at Trill Burger. The tables are communal, right? Half the tables in Trill Burger are communal. So there's only a couple of 4-seaters. After that, you're gonna probably have to sit with somebody. You'll start hearing how people talk. Where you from? Sound like you from New Orleans or somewhere. Yeah, bruh, came down here to get the burger. You know, you start making friends, right? You start meeting people. Like, that's a residual cultural benefit of Trill Burger. It's really just supposed to be a good dining experience, and we work very hard to do that. But Trill Burger is not just a culinary brand. Trill Burger is cultural. You know what I'm saying? People come for the burger and they stay for the culture. And that's what we want to be. We want to show people that there is a way to be everything you are culturally and still deliver a product to everybody, even if they don't agree with you or identify with you. People got to leave a lot of bullshit at the door to get this burger. Just like the rodeo. You know, we created at the rodeo an opportunity for the entire city to come together and enjoy Houston's culture collectively. But if you're white and you don't like black people, don't even go to rodeo. Because black people are gonna be there and get turned up. If you black and you don't like white people, don't go to rodeo. They're gonna be there, they're gonna be turned up. Mexican, gay, it doesn't matter. Whatever your prejudice is, you gotta leave it at the door in order to enjoy it. You can't bring it inside and enjoy the rodeo. But my thing is when you leave the rodeo, why would you pick it back up? That's the question we gotta ask ourselves. We leave that shit at the door for a football game, for a basketball game. We damn sure leave it at the door for Astros. And we live in the most divisive time in our country. But if Altuve hit a home run, me and the Trump dude gonna high five. Right? I'm just being real. Look at Harvey. Look at Harvey. Look at how many people had to go in neighborhoods they never would have walked in, trying to save people's lives. They left all that shit to the side. Houston, I've seen, look at the George Floyd march. 70,000 people, no cars burnt, no windows broken, no paint on the building. Houston is different, bro. Houston is really different. I go all over the country. Noah, you see it too. Name me a city that celebrates their old school artists like Houston. Nobody.
Not.
Nobody. No one. You go to LA, they don't celebrate old school. Maybe Snoop and Cube, but Battle Cat and those dudes, they don't get the respect they're supposed to get. Big Daddy Kane and them, they getting all that love now because it's the 50th year anniversary, but they don't be showing up for them and Rakim like that all the time. Yep. I don't give a fuck who it is. Kiki that shit was packed last night for June 27th. You know what I'm saying? We had literally hundreds of people, almost 2,000 people, show up at Trill Burgers yesterday to support Big Pokey's family, to buy the meal and the soda. Houston is different. Houston is different. And I'm not saying that we're better than people, but we understand our city and our culture better than I think other people do, and we represent it way better than anybody. You could never fill up Madison Square Garden. No, I take that back. Giant Stadium, right? With people who haven't had a hit record in 15 years. When we did the first rodeo, the newest record was Players Anthem. That's from 2007. That was the newest record. When we did it this year, the newest record was All Go Everything, Trinidad James. That's an 11-year-old record. You can't, man, this city different, bro. This city different. And now they proud because we got a different burger than there. Motherfuckers got to come from all over the world to Houston to get the best burger in the world right now. And that's culture. That's culture, because you wouldn't feel comfortable going into Philadelphia to a burger place that you ain't never been to. You wouldn't feel comfortable going to LA to somewhere to get a burger. You gotta ask what side of town, can I wear my hat, what color, all that shit. This Houston, everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome.
It's a beautiful thing. Well, Bun, on that note, I think I would like to thank you for your wisdom and your candor, and congratulate you on the success of Trill Burger. It is
Thank you.
A fantastic burger.
It's not my success. This is the burger that Houston built. I'm from Port Arthur. I will always represent Port Arthur in everything I do. But we debuted this burger in Houston. Houston stands outside in the sun, in the sweat, to get this burger to make Houston look good and to make me look good. I am proud to represent this city with this burger, and I'm proud to represent y'all.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I would like to raise a toast. Thank you guys all for coming.
I've been waiting to drink this shit too.
And I would like to thank our partners at Tres Generaciones for helping us build this platform to celebrate those that are willing to fail twice and get up Tres.
Yes.
Cheers to you, Bun B.
Cheers, thank you. Here's to Houston.